All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a discussion about how indie authors and really authors in general can become part of a community. And the emphasis here is going to be a contributing part of the community because as authors, we know that you write you put tons of effort into writing a book, and that's a great accomplishment in and of itself. It absolutely is. But unless you are networking, unless you're part of a community, or of course the very rare authors who have the big backing of the big publishers, and even those lucky enough to be published by big publishers, most of them really do need to network. They need to be part of communities and they need to reach out to other people and have connections and reply to fans and that kind of thing. So I have brought a guest here to talk about this with me, none other than the wonderful author P.L. Stewart, who is the author of the Drowned Kingdom saga, beginning with A Drowned Kingdom, Book One. I personally have just finished reading the third book, which is there. It's hard to remember which way to point when you're on Zoom, but it's Lord and King is the third book. I just finished reading, had a wonderful time with it. Just enamored with this epic, truly epic fantasy that I'm reading here. Great stuff. A kind of a, just the premise to begin with is a kingdom that is fallen. It is a riff off of the Atlantis myth, in a sense. But then, okay, what next? Really, that's the beginning of all of this, and you have a central character who's absolutely iconic in Othron, a very complex, very mixed. Sometimes you want to punch him in the head, kind of lead character, but it's quite an incredible journey to learn along with Othron. So yeah, but that's enough for the moment. We may return to the Drowned Kingdom saga, but PL, I'm so excited to be talking with you because I consider you to be an expert on this topic, and that is something that I feel we can learn from somebody who is constantly contributing to the various book communities that you're part of. I think you're the perfect person to chat with about how an author can do this because you're going to hear crickets if even if you wrote the best book in the world, if how are people going to hear about it? That's the next thing. That's maybe even harder than writing a book is the constant effort. There's no like magic pill. There's no one thing that you'll do and then presto. It's going to be a lot of hard work, but there are actually fun ways. There are good ways that you can uh, become part of communities and contribute that will lead to people. And yes, there is a selfish aspect to this, of course. You want people to notice that you're an author too, even as you're plugging other people's books. And there's nothing wrong with that because that's how, especially indie authors, but really authors in general these days are going to get noticed. So I've been blabbing enough. PL, it's good to see you, my friend.
It's great to see you, Philip. It's always a good day when I see an email pop up from you and you'd like to chat about something. So that definitely makes my day. I thank you so much for having me. I'm humbled that you would choose me, of all people, to discuss this topic. I look to you specifically as one of my biggest inspirations and examples for the very same thing. An example of someone who's built a genuine community, who has integrated themselves within the community, who is a shining light. And, I've talked about you refer to as a leader in that community, someone whose example you should follow. And I think, Philip, if I'm going to embarrass you here for the next little while, because you know how highly I think of you as a person, and of course as an author. Again, thanks for that. But this is the thing, um, you know, if people were going to describe Philip Chase, the ones who had the privilege of getting to know you virtually through Dear Dr. Fantasy and your awesome BookTube channel, through all the stuff you've done, for example, being a judge for the self-published fantasy blogger for Mark Lawrence, all the things you've done in terms of reviews of other authors, the things you've done in general to support and boost. I think the one thing that would stand out, aside from perhaps the fact that you are definitely a brilliant academic. I think your credentials need no boosting there, and of course that you are also a fabulous author. I mean, I've been quite open about the fact that I'm a stan. I'm a simp for the Dan trilogy. It is my currently my favorite self-published fantasy series of all time. And while that's a short list, because and that's my issue, I haven't read a lot of completed indie fantasy series. Yours is currently sitting in the top spot. But besides being a brilliant author, brilliant academic, very popular booktuber, etc., I think the way the people I know you would describe you in the first thing I think about, aside from all your other glowing qualities, is how kind you are. Just how immensely kind and just pleasant and, witty and just someone you just, it's that person, they say, oh, that person you want to have a beer with and hang out with and just chat with for a while. But also that person who goes out of their way to do those little small acts of kindness that we look for in the people we want to associate with, the people we gravitate towards. And I want to give you just a quick concept that the purpose of this broadcast is about what can you use an indie author to be part of a community and be integrated and build and coincidentally help promote and boost your kindness is a force multiplier in this
Hmm.
case. I perhaps I would add altruism with that, but kindness essentially to keep it simple. That's a force multiplier because the thing is that it can transform you from being someone who perhaps feels isolated. Writing can feel like a very solitary activity. We've talked about this before, but it can transform you to be part of this thriving literary community that exists and it's out there. You just have to find your part of it, your section where you fit in,
Hmm.
and so much of that, and I say kindness, altruism, is, and again, it may seem counterintuitive, but you hinted at it earlier, shifting from or not starting with and continuing not to focus on aggressive self promotion, but
Wow.
instead focus on uplifting and boosting others.
Hmm.
That's the single most effective way to scale and build a network and a community and be part of it. That's how you build. And all of that kindness and altruism, Philip, it pays so much dividends, especially, you know, we tend to, as authors now, especially indie authors, and as you mentioned, traditionally published authors, we have to devote a lot of time to social media specifically.
Yeah.
Okay, whether that's YouTube, all these big social media platforms, Twitter slash X, whatever you want to call it, Instagram, etc. And now imagine if you spend most of your time on these platforms as opposed to promoting your own work. I'm not saying not promote your work, but
Right.
boosting others,
Right.
right? Just boosting others. And genuinely like talking about books that you love, singing the praises of those authors, putting a short review on, and again, it's these small acts of kindness, in our regular lives. There's plenty of people who are looked at as being just wonderful, kind people. And you know what? It's not necessarily that they're going out to build a school in some disadvantaged country, or they're even volunteering at a soup kitchen, or donating blood. It's those little tiny acts of kindness that they do day to day that get noticed, that like, wow, that person's really kind. They
Mm.
always hold the door open for people. They always say something kind when they can, when someone's down. They always try to lift people's spirits. It's those little things that they do that you can form an impression that, hey, this person's really kind and they're genuine about it, right? And they're consistent with it. So if you're doing that, those are things that can really, really grow your platform. You selflessly celebrate the success of your peers and people that you look up to and admire, and people that need lifting up themselves, perhaps. That will build rapport far quicker than constantly pitching and plugging. Hey, look, buy the Dan trilogy, buy the Dan trilogy. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and also too, it just feels so good. It feels so much better.
Yeah.
Like, Philip, I know for me, like I think a lot of us as authors, we feel disingenuous and somewhat fraudulent when we're constantly even saying anything about our books, much
Yes.
less even if it's like, okay, it's a time when we should celebrate and we should success, we should promote, something great that happened. But we never feel that way about plugging or pitching other people's books, right?
Hmm.
You can
Hmm.
sing to the heavens. I can sing to the heavens about the Adan trilogy. It makes you feel good, and it's very different for compared to me promoting my own work. So the more you promote others, the more likely the community is organically going to rally behind you when
Hmm.
you launch, the next big thing in a dance, right? Because hey, Philip spends most of his time plugging others. Let's get behind Philip. He deserves it. He's a great guy. He's always boosting my work or putting a great review on someone. Let's give him the spotlight. Let's give him his flowers. So I think that is probably the core of how you accomplish that. And there's so many actionable ways you can do that. As simple as just tweeting and posting and sharing a book by another author, or highlighting what you generally like of them. Like I said, leaving sincere reviews. You can put it on a platform like Goodreads or Amazon, or just put a little tweet out, congratulating someone on their book launch or their award, or they got a positive review that they post, and just engage authentically too, like like
Yes.
like comment, make it genuine. And again, you're going to get deeper engagement. You're going to get those other authentic, generous personalities. They're going to be drawn to you, right? And as long as you're someone who's proven that you're genuine, you're going to build that trust in the community.
Hmm.
Do collaborative things, right? Joint book promotions, newsletter swaps, like podcast appearance, or be on a panel. Those are all really good things that you can do as well. But Philip, I just want to say, because I've been blabbing now for a while too, and I want to let you comment. All these things, because being an independent author or an author of any kind can also be quite stressful.
Mm.
It's a real great well-being boost and a mental health boost when you feel that you're doing all these positive things and you feel that you're part of a community and you're helping others. It's just this positive mental loop, right? That it fights against the isolation that you might feel, especially when you're just new and you don't have a lot of people following you. You don't have a lot of those genuine relationships. You haven't forged them quite yet. You feel like you're shouting at the void, and your book doesn't have all those ratings on Amazon yet. And it's a there's a lot of benefits to doing that for you as a person and as an author. So, anyways, sorry, I'm blabbing, but I'm gonna.
No, it's wonderful. Everything you said is gold, and I hope that people are taking their notes. But let's talk about that, what you just mentioned, because there may be somebody watching who's an indie author on the verge of finishing their first novel or something, and they're excited about publishing, but there's this sense of dread too, like how am I going to get people to know about this? And sure, I can hop on X or Instagram or whatever, make an account, and but how do I get that traction? How do I? And of course, you and I both started with nothing. I started this YouTube channel in 2020, knowing nothing about BookTube or anything else, and being a social media illiterate essentially. And I just chipped away, chipped away, chipped away, and I was fortunate to have very kind people notice me and say, "Hey, look at this guy. He's talking about this book I like over here." And got into conversations with lovely people like yourself over the years. And but it's not something that you can necessarily expect to be an overnight success. Like you're not going to form a. It's not like build it and they will come kind of thing. It's a steady over time. You've got to keep at it. It's steady tapping that breaks the stone, right? And it's even more so than writing a book, which also is something that you do one little bit at a time. I have found at least the marketing aspect of this, the networking aspect of this to be the biggest challenge by far. And yet, as you say, there is joy in it too, because there is genuine fulfillment in finding an indie author's book that you love and you read it and you're like, I have to tell people about this. This is such a good story. And celebrating other people's wins. You're going to feel good, actually. Exactly what you said. It feels wonderful when you're cheering for someone else. And that is something that people will notice because And I don't think people mean ill by this, but I've certainly, and I'm sure many other people can attest to with platforms, established platforms can attest to the fact that occasionally you'll hear from someone you've never in your life interacted with, and they're like, "Hey, I love your channel. Here, I have this book. I want you to read it and review it for me by next week." And I'm like, "What? Who are you?" I don't even know you. Um, Now, as opposed to somebody who's been maybe leaving comments on my channel for years, or has been interacting with me on other social media, who's maybe retweeted my tweets or given me boosts over time, I'm going to be much more likely, even though I have a backlog of books to read, as you do, and we're trying to support as many people as we can. But I'm going to be much more likely to say, okay, this person is a contributing member of this community or these communities, and I want to take this person seriously. It may be a few months before I can get to this book, but I'm going to be more likely to respond to that than to somebody who comes out of nowhere. So that is important, I think. But yeah, what do you have tips for somebody who is just getting started and is just like feeling lost, like, okay, how do I get the word out? How do I do this? What are the first steps? How do they start getting traction? What platforms are right for, or have you found to be more conducive to? Because I've found different platforms are useful for different things. So what, in your experience, PL, are some of the tips you would give somebody in that position?
Well, those are all excellent points, Phillips. I think for me, the biggest thing is as indies, especially entrepreneurs, we have to consider that our marketing, promotional, social media, networking thing has to coincide with our writing. So the big first advice is start really early. This isn't something that you build, as you said, overnight. You very aptly point that out. So essentially, from the time you're thinking of being an author and an author that wants to publish a book and wants to put it out there to the world, that you want other people to read it and see it, start engaging in social media.
Mm.
And you have no book. You might your manuscript might be as long as 2 words. You're in your mind you're at least 2 years away from publishing that book, 3 years, 5 years. But I can guarantee you, most authors are readers, and most authors have books that they love, and most authors, whether or not they're naturally inclined to social media, whether they're a bit more, shall we say, a bit more extroverted and willing to engage in these large platforms with a bunch of people. I think most authors generally look for authentic connections and relationships, and you can find those on social media. You have to find your tribe. You have to, I think, start out perhaps with people with more similar tastes and similar likes, and you'll find those people. Like, for example, you love Malazan, right? You're a big
Sure.
Malazan fan. Well, there's an outstanding and humongous community of readers, authors, bloggers, editors that love Malazan, for example.
Yeah.
So get into that Discord if you're comfortable with it. Join that online chat group. Engage simply where you see people posting on whatever platform you're on, these posting Malazan and commenting, and maybe you might strike up a friendship with someone who really, yeah. Then you talk offline about, yeah, I just love I love Rake, and yeah, he's just amazing. Do you know what I mean? You start building those connections, but start early, because people people when you just come out, hey, like you said, I like today, your first day on social media, I wrote a book and here it is, and you're drowning in a sea of millions of posts about people not only talk about whatever, but also promoting and letting people know they launched their book or there's something going on with their book, that have been on social media for years,
Yeah.
have a following, have a background. That's, you're drowning in the sea, right? But if you have your own community, your own little posse of people and network and tribe that automatically are going to know about this in advance, that are going to, you've been interacting for years, you've had friendships with for some time, and you've been on social media and you're an established presence, and you build up towards your launch, you can do all kinds of things. Like, for example, you can tease the cover when it's the right time to do a cover reel. You can ask for reviews and post reviews that from people that loved your work. You send out arcs.
Yeah.
You can put little snippets of quotes from your books to give people a sample of your writing, to see if people like, hey, oh well, I like the way that sounds, right?
Yep.
You can do teasers about the back cover synopsis or all kinds of things. You can do share artwork. Like you can do that over the course of years leading up to your launch. So by the time your launch comes out, other people, your friends and your backers are stoked for this launch. Other people who don't know you are, this looks intriguing. I've been following this. Looks something I may want to invest my hard-earned money in to buy
Hmm.
it off Amazon or wherever. And you got buzz. Now you got a buzz for your launch. It's actually a launch. It's not just you simply posting, your book. So start early and often.
Good.
That's my primary piece of advice.
Start early and find people with common passions. So if I'm a fan of, like you said, Malazan or The Faithful and the Fallen or Jenny Wirtz's Wars of Light and Shadow, find places where there are people excited to talk about those books and be a genuine part of those communities and make friendships. And some of those people are going to be your beta readers. They're going to be the people who are reposting your art that you shared. They're going to be the ones who are shouting for you. So yeah, that's a great tip, I think. Start early, find people with common passions.
I would also say, Philip, you hit the nail on the head about social media platforms, that there are so many out there, and some are better used for certain purposes as opposed to others.
Yes.
But overarchingly, though, I'd say, Philip, is start off with the ones that you are most comfortable with, the ones you are most familiar with. Perhaps you had a personal account on Instagram and you posted all your pictures of your dog and your cat and your family and your sports events or whatever. But now you're going to be an author, so then you can either open up an author account, or if you're comfortable, use your existing personal account to start. Okay, now I'm an author, and start posting things there. So you're already familiar with that platform. You know the ins and outs. You know what button to press to make something pop. So use those platforms. And use those platforms where you already have an established audience, perhaps. I mean, as authors, especially indies, at first, some of the people who are going to be reading your books are your friends and your family, and so they're going to see your stuff, and eventually you'll gain other readers beyond that. And so start with those comfortable platforms, and also too, yes, try and expand and try new things and learn and grow and develop with other platforms. But also, you will find ones that simply, for whatever reasons, just don't jive with you,
Hmm.
just don't work for you.
Sure.
So with those platforms, I think you have a decision to make. If you think they're critical to your growth as an author, to the marketing entrepreneurial side, like to grow your brand, like you say, you know what? If you think stuff, wow, for example, man, TikTok, like I think I could really, really do well on TikTok, and it's such a unique platform, and I see people really doing well there, but I don't know if well, then you might have a decision to make. You might need to hire a PA if you can afford it. You might need to have one of your friends or family members that will do you a favor, and they're good with don't worry, Dad, I'll do your TikTok for you, right? I'll manage that. You give me some engagement stuff, and I'll you know what I mean. I'll do the actual nuts and bolts
Yeah.
stuff for you. But I think you will get more out of platforms you generally work well with and mesh with,
Hmm.
and don't have any anxiety managing. Then even if you think strategically they can help grow your brand, then you would with something that you really. I really drive with Twitter and X. A very comfortable platform. I can, you know, I think you'll get more traction long term out of those platforms rather than ones that you struggle with, right? Because your engagement won't be as genuine, and you'll forget to post, or you'll fumble around how to do things, and
Uh-huh.
you know what I mean. So I think that's also really important. I would also say that you're going to have to manage, balance your
Yeah.
time between how much you're going to invest in marketing, promotion, social media, all those other things. Some of them you love to do, some of them you will love. For example, YouTube, right? Or say you have a YouTube channel. I love doing YouTube and love having a YouTube channel, but how much time can I invest versus my writing?
Yeah.
Right? Which is the core of everything. Because if you don't write the books, then it's an
I was going
author.
to read
So
those unwritten books. Yeah.
yeah, it's a constant struggle. It's a constant balance, right? you may have to call and help if you're lucky to have a supportive partner, or friends, or as I said, or you have the budget tolerance to hire people to help you do things,
Yeah.
right? That perhaps can free you up to do, the things that only you can do, such as write the books, right? That's also, some people have social media managers. Some people have, you know what I mean, people to manage their websites for them.
Yeah.
If you again, if you have the tolerance or the ability or the help, those are things that can also help you. Hey, I want to focus on my YouTube channel. I'm the only one who can make YouTube videos. So, but I have, you have a friend or family member actually manage the site for you and post things. So,
Hmm.
I think there's things that you can do but that is definitely a constant struggle. I think we authors, we independent authors, we entrepreneurs find between doing all this promotional stuff and then balancing, the writing side, and of course the rest of your time, your personal life, your family, your job, your
Yeah.
your hobbies, your children, your partner. Like, it's a balance. But I think also to remember that um, you can't be slavish to it either. Like, know when to draw back. Perhaps you think, you know what, I'm spending too much time on social media. Maybe your partner says you're spending too much time on social media. You
Uh-huh.
need to, disengage and connect with the family dinner here that's going on, right? So, do you
Yep.
know what I mean? It is something too we have to be cognizant of, because it's easy to get addicted and to get, I made some success. I had only 5 followers last week. Now I got 1,000. Or this video I posted on YouTube got me so much traction. I need to do more of that. And like, it's easy to run away with naturally, right? Because especially when you get success or positive reinforcement, then
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna dig in, focus more. Oh, I just reached 1,000 reviews on Goodreads. I gotta get to. You also have to know to find that balance in your life, right?
That's really wonderful advice. Very wise, I think, because if you've lost touch with what brought you to writing in the first place, because you're chasing after view counts and followers and such, then you will quickly, I think, lose that passion. You'll fall out of love with what you're doing. So it's really important to stay in touch with what brought you to writing in the first place. And we're saying, yeah, you have to do this, 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 but you don't have to do it all at once, and you don't have to spend all your time doing that. Uh, Gradually, we're talking about gradually building up things here. It's really the steady growth that counts more. Yes, okay, it feels nice when you make a video that blows up and lots of people follow you because of that video, but that's the exception, not the rule. And one video that blows up, if I had to choose between one video that blows up and 100 videos that just get nice, steady, engagement, I'm definitely doing the latter. There's no question in my mind that you're looking for long term here. You're looking for long term. And don't let yourself get burned out. That's a really important thing that you're emphasizing there. And the people in your life, they matter more than anything. So don't get to a point where you're neglecting those relationships and whatnot. That's a very important thing, I think, that we don't talk about enough, really, in our book communities. And you will always see somebody posting something to the effect of, "Guys, I'm out for X months right now. I'm just too burned out." And then, you want to try to avoid, I mean, there's no shame in that because we've all felt that at different times. But at the same time, wouldn't it be better if we could avoid getting to that point, And I think that your advice about, keeping your relationships the priority and making sure you're in touch with why you love this in the first place, that's super important, isn't it?
Yeah, I would also finally say, Philip, and I could go on, but I think that the third piece of advice, and I feel, yeah, again, I feel these are generous. Who am I to give advice? But I think you have to very much be true to yourself, but also protect your brand, protect your author name, protect your reputation. And I think one of the easiest ways, unfortunately, I don't want to emphasize the negative, but one of the easiest ways, unfortunately, to affect that negatively is how you engage on social media
Yeah.
and what you choose to engage with.
Yeah.
So, it's we're human beings who we have beliefs of what we're passionate about, and we have expressions that we want to get out there, and and a lot of times it comes from a really good place. However, realize that on social media, first of all, anything you say can potentially be there for posterity.
Yep.
And if people interpret that in a negative way, then that can really be perceived as you being someone that is negative, or is has said something that perhaps is inappropriate, or and sometimes I think the thing on social media is that because there's so many avenues with which you can engage,
Yeah.
sometimes if you engage the wrong way, that can really really impact how people perceive you and affect your reputation. It's basically like your credit, right?
Right.
You have to guard by making all your payments on time. You have to guard by not doing things that affect your reputation to lenders. It's the same exact thing on
Yep.
social media. So be careful. Sometimes it's best if you see a topic that I feel really passionate about this. Take a deep breath, sit back. If you want to send a post, maybe ask a few friends before you or family that you send out that you trust. Maybe not engage, have a private discussion. You want to vent, you want to get something out, you really agree with this topic. Hey, I'll email Philip, or talk to Philip. Phil, man, I saw that post and I really want to really say this. I want to take this stance, and someone calm and kind and rational, I feel, might say, Peel, maybe I might not want to say that, or maybe say that in this way, right? So, though, protecting your author and your personal
Yeah.
image and brand is really critical when you're on social media, because again, things can get misconstrued. That it's different from having a one-on-one conversation where something in writing can be taken out of context easily. You didn't intend to say it that way, but that's how it becomes perceived. So
Yeah.
just be very careful with how you engage on social media.
Very good tip because you often see that negativity gets clicks on social media, on YouTube. You have these inflammatory thumbnails about how so and so is a terrible author, or and that it gets clicks. People seem to be attracted to dumpster fires for some reason. So, but this is long term, guys. This is a long term. Yes, maybe you'll get a bunch of views on your video roasting some well-known author, or I've even seen people who went out of their way to be cruel to indie authors. And I just think that's a bad look for anyone, really. Yeah, it'll get immediate views, but will that build a long-term relationship of trust? Because you're trying to, as an author, you're in the initial stages of doing this. You're not even trying to sell books. You're trying to make readers, right? And you're trying to build long-term relationships with people. And that is way more important than getting a bunch of clicks on a negative review or something like that. So keep it positive, And also on the subject of negativity, don't engage with negative reviews. You're going to get them, and it's okay. Even take it as a sign of, that you're an author now. When you get that one-star review, you made it. But don't engage. Do not engage with anyone who, even if it looks like they didn't even read your book and they just seem to be out to get you for whatever reason. And believe me, there are going to be people like that, for sure. But don't engage. Just ignore that. That's nothing to do with you, really. And it may be unfair that people can one-star review bomb you on Goodreads without consequence, but you have to live with certain things like that. And it's just part of the territory. But yeah, as much as possible, stay away from all that negativity. And I think, if you want to read reviews, just read the 5-star ones. Maybe the 4 stars too. But don't go reading 1-star reviews of your book if you want to be in a good mood. So, but so yeah, any other tips for people out there? I mean, we're not going to cover everything here, but you wear many hats, PL. You are someone who's served for as a judge for SPFBO. You are now involved as an editor for Grimdark Magazine. You have your own channel, but you also, along with the lovely Taylor from Made Between the Pages, have a wonderful collaboration that you do. and you interview all kinds of great people in that capacity. So, what have been some of the most fulfilling roles for you, other than being an author? Obviously, that's there. We know that's part of it. But what have been some of the most meaningful aspects of this whole journey of being an author, but wearing all these other hats?
Well, thank you, Philip. You highlighted a lot of them. Being an assistant editor for Before We Go blog, working with Grimdark Magazine.
Yep.
I think so. I guess linking back to how what's a great way to get involved in community. Mark Lawrence, again, I can't say enough good things about Mark. I, I had mentioned the other day on live, they say, "Oh, never meet your heroes," but having met him in person in Glasgow, and just seeing how kind he was, knowing he was a good person beforehand, and
Yeah.
just a wonderful father and devoted husband, and just but what he's done with the self-published fantasy blog off, a very well-known international best-selling author who didn't have to do something to give back. There
Yeah.
was no, there was the only reason, the only motivation to do that is to help shine a light on independent publishing works that are lesser known and to give them a spotlight, which has, I will add, led to directly to traditionally publishing contract. And that's not the nirvana, but I'm just saying, like, that contest has not only given a brilliant reputation to many self-published authors who otherwise would languish in potential obscurity, but has also directly led to them securing agents and book deals. Like, I can't emphasize, what an amazing thing Mark has done and how big that is. But back to the contest itself, by virtue of entering the contest, you will make friends with other authors.
That's the
There's all
important
kinds
part. Yeah.
of discords, all kinds of chat groups, all kinds of, as you watch authors go through the same journey, you're sharing, you're commiserating. It's like, it's like war comrades. You're going to this content. Some people will advance, some people will not. You'll get a glorious review or a review that that feels tougher on you.
Yep.
You'll go through this together, and you'll also potentially, as time goes on, you move through the contract contest, and you're out of certain blog groups. Other bloggers will reach out to you once there's no longer a conflict, like they're not your book, and they'll say, "Hey, I thought your book was great," and you make friends there. And everybody talks about the bond, especially between the finalists,
Yeah.
that it becomes this inseparable posse that you will keep for the rest of your writing career and your life. So I think that contest is a great way to just dip your pond in the community, and suddenly, organically, you'll make all kinds of friends. Be a blogger. Some of the close people I met are from working with them on Before We Go blog and or Grimdark Magazine. And I'm honored to have a great relationship with Beth Talbot. Shout out to the wonderful
Yep.
Beth, our fearless leader at Before We Go blog and an editor at Grimdark uh, Magazine, who's done so much for me, for my career, for my everything. Just a wonderful human being. And you form these relationships, right? And these really bright, brilliant people who are shining lights in the community.
Yeah.
And so, but there's an example. Become a blog, join a blog site. There's so many great ones out there. FanFi Addict, and I can't name them all, right? But become review books. Yeah, become a blogger.
Yeah.
Do it
Start on
for.
your own, and just be consistent, and somebody's going perhaps to notice you, and maybe, or you can even put yourself forward at a certain point and say, if you're looking for additional reviewers for, this your group, I would love to be part of that. That's something you can do. And you mentioned SPFBO. And go into that not with the marketing strategy that you're going to win SPFBO and get a contract with a publisher, and that's probably not going to happen. But if you go into it and you become a kind and gracious member of that community, and you congratulate people who are forwarded in the contest, and you read their books and you leave reviews for them, and that sort of thing, you can become part of a community. You can become a pillar in that community, and people will recognize that and be far more likely to check out your work. You make traction that way. You become a contributing part of that community. And it is a community more than even it is a contest, in my opinion. SPFBO. It's a there's a whole Facebook, forum there where people interact and cheer on others and commiserate, when they fall out of the contest and so on and so on. But always keep it positive, don't bellyache about, oh, that judge was so unfair to me, that kind of thing. I mean, that's just the the likelihood of you winning that contest, even if you've written a brilliant book, is you're one against 300 who get in. So um, you know that's just the luck of the draw sometimes too. But be gracious, right?
Yeah, and I would definitely say for me too. Um, you talked a bit about page chewing, and that I do with my awesome partner Taylor from In Between Pages, who's a brilliant YouTuber. Check out Taylor's channel; she is fantastic.
Yeah,
So we do under the page chew umbrella. We have an interview feature series, but I actually started a YouTube channel because I wanted to start doing book reviews on authors that are perhaps lesser known and some that are much more well known,
yeah,
but mainly focus on interviews for predominantly independent authors who are lesser known that really deserve a light to be shone on them and their works. And especially, I think, I talked about this, Philip, like when readers learn how amazing some of these authors are as people
yeah,
and their personalities shine, and not everybody's going to be comfortable coming on YouTube and doing an interview. Some people prefer a podcast, where they're not seen, where it's just radio only, audio only. Some people might prefer a written interview, but for those that are comfortable with coming on video, I think it just, you can see you can see the personality, you can see the genuineness, you can see the intelligence. It all really bubbles to the surface, and I think one of the reasons I started doing Six Elementals interviews is to do that for those authors that you may not have heard of. And guess what? I mean, the joy it brings me to see a comment in after the video that, oh, I didn't know about this author. No, I just bought their book. Right. And that, like that, just, I mean, sometimes it's made me want to tear up, just that. And who am I? I'm a very tiny channel, right? But
yeah,
just the fact that my little tiny weeny sphere of influence, uh, has a positive effect on another author because I know what it's like, right?
yeah.
I know what it's like when you only have 5 reviews, and I know what it's like when no one is reading your book yet, or no one knows, who knows what the John King. It's like, oh, well, I saw Philip Chase, post something about that. Oh, let me just check that out because I like Philip. I respect his channel, and like so
He's
those
not a
those
complete idiot. Yeah,
but yeah, that is one of it. I That channel allows me to give back, I believe, in a meaningful way
I
that I
agree.
perhaps would not otherwise have been able to had I not. My only regret is that I wish I started a YouTube channel a long time ago.
Uh-huh.
That I even perhaps have a bit, maybe a bit of a bigger platform from which to speak and promote books. But I'm quite happy with. I don't focus on followers. I don't focus on clicks. I just put the content up. I approach the same way I do my writing. I don't focus on how many people read my book, how many reviews. I'm grateful for all of them, extremely grateful. And I'm extremely grateful for what audience I have and the people that actually read my book and generally enjoy, who aren't my relatives, right? Or my workmates.
Well,
That's
and
a
there's
real.
a group of us. I mentioned early on that I finished book three, and there's a group of us. Zachary Shea has a channel that has been hosting discussions. We've done the first two, and very soon we will be doing the third book. Um, so there are plenty of other people who have read and appreciate. The author Jenny Wirtz speaks very highly of the Drowned Kingdom saga. To get praise from Jenny Wirtz, who says that the series is incredible and that somehow you manage to get better with every single book. That's significant praise right there. So yeah, I mean, you have succeeded, PL, in not in giving, and that has also resulted in people noticing you, people picking up your books, and another little tip I think for your channel, if you want to be someone who does help, who reaches out a hand to people who actually need it, because Brandon Sanderson, God bless him, he's been highly successful. Does he need my little channel to talk about his books? Probably not. Will that make a huge difference in his sales numbers? Probably not. But maybe I do want to talk about the latest book in the Stormlight Archive, and I'll get people to come to my channel that way because let's face it, that's how it is. If people see a thumbnail with a book they already know, they're more likely to click on that, whether they have a positive or a negative opinion on it. Whereas if you're talking about a book that they haven't heard of yet, less likely to click on that. But if I have a channel where like you do and like I do, we'll talk about the big authors in the genre, and we'll get probably a higher view count on those videos. Um, but we'll also talk about the indie authors. We'll talk about the less known, and maybe we don't get a ton of views on that, but we're here because of our passion. And I'll tell you what, getting a few people to watch that video on that indie author who will, just what you said, I hadn't heard of this before. I'm going to check it out. I'm going to support this author. That feels better than getting 100,000 views on a video to me. Having a few people comment, oh, this sounds like a book I would enjoy. Thank you for introducing me to this author. That is the best sort of engagement for me. So I love what you said there.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And it's not like as if, I mean, almost, I can say without a doubt, I've loved and enjoyed and respected every author I've interviewed, regardless of their platform. I love Tad Williams. He's a warm, wonderful, funny, amazing
Yeah,
person. But as you said, my interviewing Tad Williams will make no difference in his international best selling brand, right? But if I think a great example is, and I think you've read this book and you've done a review as well. And this is again linked to SPFBO. Um, uh, Dale Odom, by Blood and by Salt.
oh
Is that the
yes,
book?
I was one of the judges last year when that won the SPFBO. Yeah, love the
But
book.
apparently, it had negligible reviews
Yep.
on any until it, and then suddenly now it has hundreds, and
Yep.
that's exactly what to me that's potentially life altering, right? Like that's the kind of impact I think I'm looking to make in my very small, like again for my small platform,
Yeah.
right? I think that's the impact you're certainly making. But it's people like you, Philip. It's people like Jenny Wirtz. It's people like I can name all the people who have been so instrumental in what little audience and platform I do have.
Hmm.
That's what makes me want to keep going and give back the same way,
Yeah.
right? Because the more I get, the more I feel compelled to give back because I have been so blessed to have to have anyone read my book and comment, to have a bunch of amazing YouTubers do a read along. Like those are things that I feel any author would just dream about, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm very blessed, and I want to I want to pay it forward. I want to
Yeah.
pay it forward.
Oh, you have done PL, and I think people respect that, and they know that. So, and of course, we're not saying this is all you have to do. You also have to work really, really hard to write a good book too. That's we're leaving that part out of this discussion. This is not about that, but you do have to write a good book as well. There's no doubt about it that you can't just be great at marketing without the hard work of writing a good book.
But the thing is, Philip, as well, like I look at it this way. Let's just say I didn't know you. I heard about your YouTube channel. I heard that again was great, but not knowing you, okay, it might perhaps, okay, well, say a lot of my friends are recommending it to me, like Janny said it's amazing, etc. It might bump up my TBR and maybe something I really have to get to that. But it might not become as much of a priority as opposed to now it's Philip Chase, who I know well, who I consider a friend, who I
Yeah,
admire. He sent me an arc. Now that is something I'm going to prioritize, right? Just like you talked about compared to the people that out of nowhere, call you and ask you to read their book. So, and had I not done that, and had we not had that kind of relationship, I would have been deprived of my favorite self-published fantasy series.
Hmm.
So I feel like that's the difference that this whole the genuine approach, the kindness, the altruism, the building a community like that, those are the benefits that they can give you. So that whereas someone will probably prioritize reading the book from someone they genuinely like, they respect, they admire, they think is a good person that they have this bond of relationship with, as opposed to someone that they don't, even if they've heard the book is really good, even if they've heard the person's a brilliant author, and you know what I mean. So I think that it really makes a difference.
Yeah, it certainly does make a difference. I'll agree with that. And that's has been in addition to that, I think, though, is just the sheer pleasure of having these interactions. And as you said from the very beginning, the fulfillment that you feel from being helpful is really important. That said, I don't think anyone should feel bad because I certainly am one of these, I have a pile of books that I want to get to, and it's difficult. I don't have time to read all the books of the lovely people that I've interacted with. Many of them have read my books and been kind enough to review them. And I could lay awake at night feeling guilty about, the fact that I haven't read this person's book yet. I haven't read that person's book yet. There's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
And hopefully people realize that, that as long as you're out there and you're doing some of the giving and not just taking, as long as you're out there and doing some of the giving, hopefully people are understanding. It's not, I think that, nobody could expect you to read all the indie authors that you interact with. There's just no way you can do that. It's unfortunate because there's so many great stories out there that this is the perpetual problem we have is we just don't have enough time in our lives to read all the books we want to read. It's a good problem, but still a problem, right? But don't feel overwhelmed or guilty because you haven't read all these books by these lovely people that you've interacted with, but do make an effort to read some of them and contribute and be part of the conversation, part of the community, that a giving part of the community.
Well said, Philip. And that goes back to the whole, like you said, intent is everything. But that goes back to the point about the whole mental health thing and, balancing your time and give yourself some grace, right? I have 13 to 50 arcs that I have had for years. Sometimes I feel horrible. I haven't read it from these authors. Again, as you said, these authors read my book and they've left reviews and they've raved about it. It's like, oh man, I'm like, you're trying to prioritize them, but also give yourself some grace and also know that people understand because most of us in the same situation, right?
Yeah.
As you said, most of us cannot get to most of the books we want to get to. But I guess my final comment on all this as an author, and this ties back into what I was saying earlier, is that, for example, I'm writing a 7-book series. It's a long series,
Yes.
okay?
Seven
But but
books.
book,
Yeah.
but book 6 just got released wide today,
Yeah.
right? And
Congratulations.
thank you, sir. And
Yeah.
and book 7 is being written and will be, oh God willing, as long as I'm
Oh
alive
my
and have
goodness.
breath,
I got to catch
it,
up by next year, PL.
early 2027.
Wow.
And that ultimately has to be the focus. I have to work on my craft. I have to become a better writer. I
Yeah.
have to hone my writing to the point where, I aspire to be like the Philip Chases and the Janie Wirtz and the Guy Gavriel Kays and the Stephen Erickses and the LJ Odoms and the LL Stevens and the Sienna Frost and the all the brilliant indie and traditional published authors that I look up to as having immense craft and talent. I aspire to reach the level of those authors, and I cannot do that if all I do, unfortunately, is read and review other people's books. I
No.
do have to focus on my own work and getting better,
Yeah,
so that
even
my
even if all you did all day long was read and review all the books you want to do, you couldn't even do them all, There's no way. Yeah. So, and you got to write. That's important. Stick with your, remember why you're doing this. Remember your passion. Yeah. You've got to feed that.
especially if I'm almost there. Like, I mean, we joke about, and again, I'm not gonna ever beat this to death about these world famous authors, the Scott Lynch's, the George R. R. Martin's, the Patrick Rothfuss's that have these international best-selling series. And for whatever reasons, it might be, life challenges, mental health, etc. But for whatever reasons, we're not blaming them, but they haven't been able to finish. And there's a fan base that's hungry for them. And well, I've always looked at that, I am certainly not even an iota in terms of their presence, their platform, their sales. I cannot afford to not deliver on, for example, the promise I made that I
Yeah.
would publish a book every year in my series.
And you've done it. God bless you. You've done it, PL. You're almost there. Wow.
Yeah, thank you. And but that's the commitment I've made, and I talked about reputation earlier.
Yeah.
Like that's part of it, right?
Hmm.
So when you make promises, so when you actually make promises to review someone's book and you say, I'm going to get it done, next month,
Yeah.
or when you make promises, or when you say, I will read it at some point, but to be honest with you, I don't know when I'll get to it. It could be years, but one day I will read it as long as I'm, alive. Like those are both promises. They have different timelines, but they're both equally as important. So
Yeah.
keeping your word is probably one of the biggest things you can do, in terms of, and because that's what you expect from others, right? So,
Mhm. Yeah.
but again, I'm blessed that I've been able to write, largely due to the support of my lovely wife Deb and my family. That
Yep.
I've been able to write 6 books and publish 6 books and have a seventh on the way. And I'm honored that people like you, who I respect and admire as authors and people, actually enjoy it. Like generally, like not just because it's your buddy, that you actually like reading the book, like, and say good things about it.
Yep.
I- I'm honored.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm excited for book seven. That is going to be a celebration we have to have next year. And I will be caught up by the time book seven comes out. So that'll be something to celebrate. I'm really looking forward to that. But I want to thank you for this conversation, PL. This is not something that I feel gets talked about enough. I think that a lot of times we're uncomfortable around this because it's like, oh, am I being selfish by engaging? I've got this other ulterior motive that I want people to read my books, and that's okay. You're networking, and you're doing good by being, helpful to other people while you're doing it. And I think it's okay to have that extra motive in there that, of course, you want people to read your book, and of course, you want people to hear about your book, and this is how you can do it. If you're especially an indie author, but increasingly, even traditionally published authors have to do all these things we've been talking about as well. It's not like there are very few exceptions of internationally famous authors who don't have to do this sort of thing. But also, don't feel like it's just a burden. It can be actually a joy. You can find yourself making relationships that become not only significant, but deeply fulfilling. You can become part of a community that you end up feeling, oh, I found my tribe. This is where I belong, man. I love this, It can be a real joy and come into it with that attitude and with the idea of how can I contribute? How can I contribute? And I think you might find yourself getting somewhere. But enjoy the process. Enjoy the process. And along the way, maybe you even realize that these relationships, these communities, are actually the reason in and of themselves, not just to, oh, make me a famous writer, get everybody. It's, oh wow, I've gotten a lot of fulfillment from being part of this, and that can be a wonderful thing. Last word to you, PL.
Just thank you so much, Philip, for allowing me to be part of your community, and for your friendship and all your support you've given me over the years, the advice and the wise counsel, all the collaborations you've allowed me part of. I've gained so much and I've learned so much. It's been so fulfilling for me. I treasure it. And I guess finally, just for everyone out there, just remember it's an organic thing. And it's the same way as if in your workplace that, you form these general relationships, as Philip said, these lifelong relationships sometimes that add so much value, but it happens organically because you work with the people alongside them every day. And hey, that doesn't mean you may not want to get promoted and that you may not network and form strategic relationships as well, but that doesn't mean they can also become genuine friendships. And the same way you're mentoring people at work, perhaps, especially in a senior position, and you're mentored in turn, like it's not so different from a lot of the other aspects of your life, or it can, in cases, it might be very similar. So as I think, if you look at that way, it doesn't become so daunting or so scary, right? That this is just something that happens naturally and will happen this naturally, and it'll happen for you. So I just want to wish all the authors and everyone else out there just immense success, and I hope you find the what you're looking for out of writing and out of the writing community.
Beautifully said, my friend. Thank you again for being here and for being you and for being a wonderful contributing member of our book community. And everybody, that is going to be it for us for now. Until next time.